Welcome to the InfoAg Learning Exchange. I'm Corey Rosenbush, President and CEO of the Fertilizer Institute, and we are excited to present this new webinar series, which aims to provide you with trusted information that will help you meet your business goals. For 25 years, the InfoAg Conference has been your source of information about the practical application of precision agriculture. But like many of you this year, we are navigating a new normal that impacts how we give and receive information. As we look at new ways to share, the Fertilizer Institute is committed to being a resource for you beyond the conference stage. The online InfoAg Learning Exchange helps us expand the conference as we seek to advance modern agriculture through data-driven solutions. But don't worry, the information you've come to expect is not going away. Building on InfoAg's strong history of educating crop advisors and ag retailers, we are looking at solutions for today's ag professional. Our content lineup is expanding to include a wider reach of tools, technologies, products, and practices that crop advisors can use as they serve their customers. This includes a broader perspective of solutions to support the 4R nutrient stewardship framework, using the right source of nutrients at the right rate, at the right time, and in the right place. As the industry advances with new technologies and practices, the Fertilizer Institute is proud to be a resource for you. With that, thank you for joining us today. If you like what you hear, we are hosting an entire webinar series before InfoAg Live, which will take place December 15th through the 17th in St. Louis, Missouri. Visit infoag.org to see our webinar schedule and archive, and for more information about the conference in December. I hope to see you there.
Well, thanks, Corey, and thanks again to our sponsor, EFC Systems. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to have this series without them. And thank you also to the Fertilizer Institute. So today, the session will open with a presentation from Joel Johanningmeyer with Winfield United. Following the question and answer session with Joel, Laura Moody and Sally Fliss from the Fertilizer Institute will be joining us to continue the Q&A and cover micronutrient resources and upcoming events from TFI. So for CCAs on the call today, I have a few notes. The QR code for this course will be placed in the handout tab near the end of the webinar. So to get your credits, you open the CCA app on your phone, point your camera at the screen, and if you have any trouble with this, just let Sally know at flis@tfi.org. You can scan the code when you're ready. On the right side of your screen, you'll see a chat box, which you can use to talk to other attendees. Above the chat box, you'll find a series of tabs you can switch through. Use the Q&A tab to ask our speaker any questions. We're going to publish those questions as they come in. I'll be reading them off, and you can vote for which questions you'd like me to ask Joel, okay? So finally, there's a handouts tab where you can find some resources related to today's talk, and you can download during the webinar. So, Joel, thanks for joining us today. You've been working in digital agriculture for much of your career. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Wendell. So I'm Joel Johanningmeyer. I live in Rochester, Minnesota currently. I work for Winfield United and have been in that role for going on 10 years coming up. I'm a digital technology manager for them, and the role has changed from ag technology to more of the digital marketing over the course of the years. Prior to that, I worked in retail agriculture as a precision ag agronomist for roughly 21 years prior to coming over to Winfield.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, Joel. Of course, my name is Wendell. I've been with US Borax for a while, working with that one big micronutrient boron. So anyway, that's what I'm up to now, and let's go ahead and start the presentation.
Hello, I'm Joel Johanningmeyer. I'm a digital technology manager with Winfield United, and I'm glad to be able to present here to you today. What we really kind of label this seminar as is using data to identify where to take tissue samples for micronutrient crop needs. So I really want to talk about, what's our strategic plan for addressing plant needs, whether it's micronutrients or making sure we have the macros right, to begin with in the first place as well. So, as I start to think through the steps here is, identifying where we want to take those samples out in the field. Create zones and utilize the sources of data that you have available to identify where we want to figure out what's going on in the field, and then discover what we're trying to address. Is it a micronutrient? Is it multiple micronutrients? Are we deficient? How are we going to address those? And then using those insights and recommendation to make an application if we can, or to address something in the future if we can't make it, for the season that's upcoming. So. Uh, creating the zones and utilizing what you have available as your sources of data. I just look back at some of the historical things that I've used in the past and are using. Maybe it's soil maps, our soil types out there. If we have a lot of variability in the field, soil maps are a good indicator of maybe taking different sample points. It's historical information that you have. If you've got multiple years of yield data, can you normalize that yield data and identify the high producing areas, the kind of the average areas, and do we have some low areas out there? Another technology that's been around for a while but really starting to kind of pick up some steam in terms of use and making in-season determinations is in-season imagery. So whether it's a drone imagery or satellite imagery or by plane, utilizing that in-season imagery is a great option. And maybe you have another way to identify the zones out in the field, but take a look at that, sample in those areas and understand we may have some variability within those fields. Today, I really want to focus around that in-season imagery and using that to drive in-season decisions here going forward. So as I was preparing for this presentation, got me thinking back, and I took a look at a project that I worked with an intern on here a few years ago. And what we did was really tried to put all of those pieces together and, can I take an in-season imagery? We're using satellite imagery and understand, what's happening in those particular areas of the field. So we ground truth those areas with the NDVI sensor. The sensor we used was a handheld green seeker unit to identify, are the high zones matching up the medium zones and the low zones matching up with what we determined from that satellite image. And then we pulled NutriSolution samples or plant tissue samples to get an understanding of what was going on in the plant. At that point in time, we're really looking at nitrogen, potassium, and sulfur, and deriving some of those recommendations. But we did collect the data for a lot of the micronutrients there as well. So first and foremost is just having the confidence in utilizing in-season imagery and just sharing that with the users at the time. So here what I've got on the screen is we took a series of fields in different timing. So round one was in that V5 to V8 time frame. Round two was in that V8 to V12-ish phase, and then round three was really as we approached tassel R1, R2 stage. And what this is saying in the green bar, the high zones that we identified from the image, 96% of the time in round one, that my highest NDVI was in that zone. So I have confidence in what that image was telling me that it was matching up. In my average zone, it matched 92% of the time. In my low zone, I was able to identify that 96% of the time. Now, we went down a little bit, but still a very good confidence that those zones are indicating what's happening in that field, even in round two. We just think about that. We've got a lot of change going on during that time frame. So, but still some good confidence that if I pick a zone, I'll be able to go out and identify what's happening in that area by pulling samples and testing that. Looking at it a little bit differently, so one of the challenging questions we got back then was, I don't have an image that's within a week or two of that. Can I have confidence as we get imagery that's maybe getting some age on that's going to match up there? So this is just a look at that. If I regardless of the rounds of sampling, imagery within 1 week, I had in the dark blue area, I had 27 fields that matched all of the zones, a high, medium, and low. I only had 3 that did not match. And just to point out, in those cases, I wasn't swapping high and low. I was maybe swapping my average and high or average and low. So it wasn't that it was flipped totally upside down. And as we move further out, we did have a few more fields that weren't matching, but we still had several fields that whether the image was taken 2, 3, 4 weeks ahead of that, we still were seeing those zones play out as we were ground truthing those fields out there. So as we start to take a look at some of the results here on this screen, again, the green are the high areas, the yellow is the average, and red is the low. We can see our averages across all of our fields that we sampled at the top of these bars. Obviously, as we're growing, we're going to be a little bit lower than when we get into kind of the peak time of the year. But the dots on each of these lines indicate the minimum of all the fields and the maximum of all the fields in each of these sections. As you can see, comparing across rounds, we had less variability in all of the high zones than we did in the low zones. To me, that kind of indicated maybe I got some fields that we don't have a lot of variability top to bottom, but maybe there's a lot of variability in the low zones, and some areas may just not be able to be corrected, or we need to address it in a different way than some of our other high or more moderate zones out there. So as we aggregated up all of those samples that we pulled from those fields, these graphs get to the percent concentration of nitrogen in the plant at that point in time across all 3 rounds. Now there's a little bit of variation in the nitrogen here, but really statistically, not a lot of difference when we aggregated that up. Looking at the research from a potassium level, very, very similar results. So, but we didn't stop there, because as we aggregated it, we started to see what it looked like on average, and in each of those zones. But as we start to take a look at field variation by fields out there, and I've got them listed here by the field number. We did have 28 fields that were in the sample size. If you look real close, you'll see that 3 of them are missing from the list here. That was due to incomplete data during this round of testing, so I didn't include them in the graph. But what this chart shows is that in my dark green, or my top bar, was my actual percent concentration of maximum within that field, versus the white bar or light green bar that shows a minimum concentration. And then the orange bars show that range. So we're seeing in some of these fields where we have a wide variance, and some not so wide. So really we got to get down to the field by field to address what's actually happening in that field, because even on a percent basis, that can mean a difference between being deficient in the field and being adequate out there. So that just pulls in some of the variance field by field. And we also saw that within the field variation for K, and even to a greater extent from in some cases there as well. So, kind of switching gears, our main topic here is talking about, micronutrients. So we can take a look at this same data, as we start to look at micronutrients. Here in this case, I'm going to show the sulfur values. So aggregated, not a lot of difference, but again, the range in sulfur is quite variable across all the field sets there. So it's really, not treating all fields the same, and being able to go out and identify areas of the field to help us determine how to address what's going on out there in that particular field. So the second step is discovering, what we're trying to address out there. Which nutrient? Is it a macronutrient? Do we have those all in line that we can start to pay more attention and get better yield, or take it to that next yield environment with micronutrients? How important is that nutrient to that crop? And can I actually make the correction that year? Some of them are easier to correct. Maybe it's a foliar application. Maybe it can make a application to the soil and still get in a plant, in time for when it needs that. So how do we discover what to address within that field? So a couple of examples here using plant tissue analysis, whether you're just pulling that information from a lab report that I've got up here on the right-hand side, or I referred to a program called NutriSolutions that we use that information provided from the lab and develop that into an easy insights that can be shared, whether you're a grower, on a field-by-field basis, or an agronomist working with a growers on a field-by-field basis. A couple different things on this report. It's an easy to identify way of showing what nutrients are deficient by our spider chart here, and which ones are adequate. Do I have the ratios or concentrations kind of right, because I know I've got some interaction with NK and N2 sulfur. And then what are the recommendations? I can create a easy to utilize and view recommendation report based on what nutrients I'm deficient in there, and be able to address and correct out there in the field. So here's just kind of a blown up view of some of that information. Again, we're utilizing that spider chart, so as we expand that mapped area of the white for the actual sample, we can see where we're sufficient, where we're deficient, whether it's starting from a macro level and then moving around a chart. So we talk about environmental or elemental prominence and getting the needs addressed for the crop really in the right order. So importance of having nitrogen right in corn is really our starting point, and then we really work around clockwise in terms of this chart. That's going to be different from crop to crop and depending on what their needs are, but it's a quick, easy visual to see what's happening within that field. So once we do get the nutrients corrected, what are the next pieces that we have? Maybe we're making this nitrogen application as a split applied nitrogen, and that would correct that. Now I'm still short in boron or manganese here in this case, so I want to make a foliar application. Maybe it's along with a fungicide treatment or a weed pass. I can add those nutrients into the spray mix. So this helps us determine what to address out in that field. And then again, I talked about the ratios here a little bit, but it's just a quick visual, on whether I should or need to apply more and to take the advantage of the amount of potassium I have out in the field, or if I need to put more potassium or more sulfur out there to help with my utilization and efficiency of my nitrogen investment that I've made. So knowing what we're deficient in has a better probability of ROI if we make that application. Here's a chart of some work we've done in our answer plot system here a few years ago, where helping with a more positive response if we know the element or the nutrient is deficient. As I look at 51 locations or all locations and made an application, no matter what the deficiency or responsive rate of that application is, in zinc, we had a 2.7 bushel response to that. Not great, but probably have a positive ROI with that. In average, it was on boron. It was a push when we made a boron application. But if we pulled out the 33 locations that were deficient in zinc, we had a positive response of 7.5 bushel in those locations. So a better probability of ROI in making that application because we knew that zinc was deficient. Same thing with boron. Of the 29 locations that boron was deficient, we saw a positive response rate, and again, a better response to that boron application to the tune of 5.9 bushels per acre. So knowing what's out there, knowing where you've looked, how do we come back in and utilize those insights that we've learned and help with recommendations to either correct that or make changes in the future. So we could go out there and make a corrective application as a blanket to the field. If we knew a nutrient was deficient, or we could also use that same information from our zone creation and create a prescription map simply by putting values in where we would get the most impact within that field. Aggregating insights. So, are there ways to create reports to help agronomists and grower know, hey, we've got this going on in the area this season or state. Maybe we need to look at your fields a little bit more. So, aggregating those insights up quicker to drive scouting and other practices out there. Geographical insights, collecting the location coordinates, be able to again create a report or a map to know, do I see some differences there? And then one of the newer pieces on the market is use of models in crop production and being able to utilize what we've learned from the data and insights that we collected and making those better in terms of calibration. So again, it is creating a prescription to match needs in a zone, and it could be as simple as whether you take an in-season image and create zones. Whether it's 2, 3, 4 zones to identify, hey, I want to put X amount of pounds in zone 1, another amount in zone 2. That's determined by what you found by going out to different areas of the field and sampling. Or you can be as involved as creating in the algorithm to develop a prescription out there. So whatever you're using to make your zones, just choose the best option that best represents what you know of the field and ground truth it from that standpoint. Aggregated data. Again, I referenced report. So a quick, easy to visualize report, of different nutrients. In these growth stages, I see that my number one nutrient that I'm deficient in most often in its geography is zinc. Can I still make an application? Do I have an application window to help correct that? Do I have an opportunity to go out and scout fields that I haven't had because I know that that zinc's deficient? Same thing with boron. And then kind of on down. The other part of this is, what's your scorecard? Do I have my nitrogen right? For future, what are some of my other nutrients in a sufficiency level that I know are right, that I don't have to worry about too. So just a way to utilize and work with that data. again, I referenced our NutriSolutions program. One of the things we've developed is an app to go out and submit samples through. With that, we're able to take location coordinates of where we pulled those samples. Now, this is a little bit of an aggregated view, but we can look at it from an account by account standpoint and say we're within this geography. Do I have areas that are showing up deficient that I should maybe concentrate more of my efforts on? Or do I have areas that are in blue here that are adequate, blue or green, that are adequate, or even excessive, that I have sufficient amount of that nutrient? Here I just pulled a query for boron. So maybe I'm taking a look in the area where I've got 48 and 116 samples. That's number within these diamonds here. Those are a number of their samples in that area. And I want to spend more time in that area to uncover what some of those needs might be out there. So and then finally with model calibration, I referenced some of the newer technology out there. One of the models that we're working with and provide to our accounts is a field forecasting tool. It models plant growth and development throughout the growing season to have a better understanding of what's happening to that plant all the way along in terms of its journey throughout the season. Currently, we're modeling some of the other aspects that go into it from a nutrition standpoint with nitrogen and potassium. And then we also model water, sufficiency of water, and then maybe some water stress. We can create ROI scenarios by making an application of whether it's nitrogen or potassium, will we have a positive ROI and when. But the thing that NutriSolutions and plant tissue analysis allows us to do is ground truth that field as we go through the season there, and it gives us a snapshot, and we're able to recalibrate that based on what's actually happening within that plant tissue analysis. So you can see here over the course of a couple different timings, I was able to recalibrate that and improve that model as we take a look at that throughout the growing season. So again, just kind of wrapping up here, on what we talked about for creating that strategic plan, from addressing the plant needs out there, identifying those zones, whatever you're starting with to work, that shows what of that field, to be able to identify where to go with that field, have confidence in that whether it's in-season imagery or historical yield data, that's able to create kind of the where and sort out what kind of field variability that I have to address out there. And then determine what you can address. Can I still make an in-season application that would have a positive ROI for that grower for that season, or do I need to have a future conversation about how we can correct that? And then create the action or application for the best probability of ROI for that field. It could be a prescription, putting on more in some areas because it needs more that you've discovered through your analysis, or just not putting anything on it because it's sufficient there. Just utilize that information to create the best ROI on that field you can, and improving that for the grower and the folks that you work with. So with that, I appreciate your time here today. Here's my email address. So if anybody's got any follow-up questions after this session and seminar, please feel free to reach out to me. But again, I appreciate your time today, and look forward to hearing from everybody if we have the chance. So thank you very much.
All right, Joel, we had a good presentation. That was a lot of information, and we have some questions to go through now. So I hope you're ready. Let's get started. So
we'll give it a shot.
Yeah,
Can you hear me okay?
I can. You're on.
Perfect.
So first questions here. Do you use a different zone for a micronutrient application versus the NP and K applications? And maybe if you're going to do that, talk about how you'd go about that.
Yeah, great question. And the answer to me is yes and no. So we got to think about some of the ways that micronutrients and macronutrients are taken up into the plant. We even have differences amongst macronutrients and how they're taken into the plant. So if there's a zone creation way that determines one method over the other, I wouldn't say that you need to use the same zone method for macros versus micros. But if you're also looking at identifying area of the field and maybe want to keep those zones, maybe like a high, an average, and a low zone, we want to push some areas versus others, you probably want to keep those zones created consistently. So I think it's going to determine what you want to accomplish at the end of the day, but there's some reasons to keep them consistent or change them up as you go through the season. So.
Okay. So next question, thinking back to your specific examples, this question is related to zinc and boron. So the question is, were the responses on the zinc and boron that you observed in that exercise significant, or were they just positive?
Yep, great question, and I'm going to apologize up front. I pulled that from another slide set as I was pulling this together. To err on the side of caution, I'm just going to say it's trend positive. With the upper limit, but knowing our system and the statistics that we create, unfortunately, I wasn't able to look that up as I saw this question come through. The number of samples, I do think that there could be a statistical advantage. I just don't have that information right now.
Sure. Okay, fair enough. Next question. So this has to relate to managing micronutrients in corn here. So what micronutrient do you find is the most challenging from your experience in corn?
How many can I pick here? So yeah. there's several. Well, it depends on where you start. Initially, even going back to my retail days, I found sulfur because as we were starting to clean up the air, we weren't getting the free sulfur anymore. So even going back to our first question there, what zones do you create? So what I was using was an organic matter map based on soil tests to change the amount of elemental sulfur I was putting on in the fall, and I'd still come back with a sulfate in the spring. But as we kind of correct some of those nutrients, what's the next nutrient that we find challenging? One of the challenging ones that I still see today is how to manage zinc. Fortunately, we have several ways to manage that. We have we have a soil amendments or soil fertilizer that we can use. We also put a foliar application on there. One of the challenges with zinc is that the plant needs it kind of throughout its whole life and at different amounts, and it's pretty immobile in the plant. So that's one of the challenging ones. And then obviously I have to give a shout out to you, Wendell, from a boron perspective. You want to get the right amount on, but you don't want to get too much on, and you want to get it into the plant because it's mobile. So that's a little bit of a challenge in how you manage that one. Whether it's foliar or granular or both is a great option to look at those. So not just one. You got a bonus of 3 there, but those are the ones that I see as the most challenging.
Yeah, and I think I can add something constructive to this in that it's almost not a question of which one is the most challenging. It's that what's the best way to go about managing all of them. And I would say that there's really no substitute for doing, in-season tissue testing. Hopefully picking a regimen that's repeatable from year to year, and then following those numbers over time and sort of building a diary, so to speak, of what your micronutrient demands are throughout the season in that crop. I think that's the best way to attack that question. So then the next one here is, for micronutrients, which data layer have you found to be the most useful to identify where to put an application or take a tissue test? I know you just mentioned organic matter, but talk about a few others that you could use.
Yeah, exactly. I go back to imagery or in-season imagery. Now I can adjust based on what the plant is telling me at that point in time, and then make an in-season adjustment. Especially with some of the foliar micronutrients that are available now. I think the imagery is a good option. You mentioned that organic matter that can apply in a few different micros, and even release of nitrogen out there. Yield levels. Do I have normalized yield that I can see consistently year over year, that I want to push areas of the field harder or pull back some of my inputs in other areas? So those are just a few, but there's a myriad of ideas out there, and pick the one that you think makes the most sense for you in your area.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sort of this seesaw of, okay, I have a data layer. Let me see if I can verify and make sense of it through other information that I gather to verify or ground truth that image or map or whatever it is that you're using, and then go back and forth, because it's a constant discovery that goes on with this data.
Yep.
The next question is, when you mentioned using in-season imagery, how high of a resolution do you believe we need to detect accurate variation in plant health? Great question. Love this one. Go ahead, Joe.
Are you sure you don't want to answer that first?
No, I want you, please.
So how high a resolution does your corrective applicator make out in the field? So a little bit facetious on that, but yeah, I mean, it's what we can manage to, really. I mean, if we're going to pull out zones in a field, do I need, sub-foot resolution out there, because I'm not going to be able to manage to that anyway. But if you're just going to go out there and look for places to scout, yeah, that drone image, or the really high resolution imagery can help guide you there. But now you have to think on the backside: what am I going to be able to do with this information anyway? How easy is it to get it, to get the high resolution, rather than using some of the new satellite providers, which are updating once, 2, 3, 4 times a week in some cases. So yeah, again, it's what you're going to be doing with that, but I don't know that you have to be all that high resolution, because we're not going to manage that anyway at this point in time.
Yeah, yep. That's great answer. So next one is, how do attendees get access to the R7 field forecasting tool? And then, does it cost something, or is it free?
Yep. Perfect. Great question. So the R7 field forecasting tool, we've rolled out about 5 years ago, I believe, within our Winfield United affiliated system. So if you're a dealer that purchases through Winfield, we're and a partner with us, we do have that technology offering for the field forecasting tool. There is a cost to it. But it's not cost prohibitive. We've got several people that have been on it. We add a few more new users each year, and we continue to improve on that model. So it's just just kind of a real high level view, but if you're working with a retailer that's working with Winfield United, please reach out to the reps that call on you, and we can have a further discussion on that. Or if you want to just email me on my email address on the site, and we can kind of chat about that as well. So,
okay. Next question is, do do you sample plants for micronutrients the same way you do for macronutrients? So here's just a question of tissue sample methodology and how you get both macros and micros in that analysis.
Yep, exactly. So very similar to how soil tests are done. You take a core sample, whether it's 0 to 6 or 0 to 12, whatever you sample out there. You send it to the lab, and they do the analysis, based on that sample that you sent in. But they break out pieces of that sample to sample each nutrient in there. Same thing with the tissue test. Uh, you send the leaf sample in, and the lab analyzes it, grind it up and analyze it for each of the nutrients. So it's the same sample that you send in. Now there are sample methods, in determining which part of the plant to pull, depending on crop. Corn. It's for the most part, it's the uppermost collared leaf, starting at V4, V5, and then once we hit tassel or R1, we start to pull the ear leaf. In soybeans, it's the leaflet that's the newest leaflet that's unfurled leaves is what we pull for those. So, and alfalfa's different parts of the plant. So yeah, we do have protocol around that and what to pull, but it's not a different part of the plant going to the lab. It's all the same sample.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. I might rephrase it, but the question really is asking: have you tried to measure nutrient level? And how you use imagery maps to determine whether or not your application made a difference. So you can do tissue analysis or you can affect imagery, right? And so the question is really asking about the interaction between those two. Have you done an application and then watched the imagery improve, and or the tissue analysis? So how would you use those in concert or separately? I think that's the question.
Yeah, exactly. So, I wish I could say that there's a clear-cut answer to you make the application and the imagery improves right away. There's might be some reasons that it does or it does not, but where we've made an application and we've improved the plant health, we can see that in the imagery. Maybe it's 2 or 3 weeks after that application, but it does start to show up. Does it happen all the time? No, because there's other factors going on in that field. Same thing with the going back and doing tissue analysis on that. Yeah, again, it depends on some environmental factors from growth. Doing work with nitrogen as an example here. I think about 3 weeks after application is when I can, really see consistently that I'm pulling that nitrogen application into the NutriSolution sample. Sometimes I can see it in, 10 days, 2 weeks, but it really takes a little bit of time from that application. Some of that can be due to, weather, rainfall, where the placement of the nitrogen in a form. So yeah, there's, but if you're looking at it, that's step one. I mean, if you're going back out to ground truth, did that application affect what I was seeing out there? Yeah, however you want to prove that out is a good step.
Yeah. Okay, so next question, kind of related, talking about looking at a new field, and you have imagery and from NDVI colors, right? So the question is, where do you start in those zones, and what would be the best way to go about using the limiting, I assume limited sampling, bandwidth to, incorporate the imagery and do it properly? How would you say one should do that?
Yeah, so a couple of things here, and and resource-wise, it'd be great if I go out there and grid sample, NutriSolutions and pull a research project up around that. But that just isn't practical. From the abilities that I've had. Now if somebody wants to do that project, I'd be very interested to see what the results were of that. So I just say, just identify the zones out in the field. And go pull those samples, and they'll be like zones. So another project that I did is I took a field and think back to that in-season imagery map. I went out in ground truth with that green seeker unit in several different locations, just the NDVI values of that, and I could create ranges. So if I had the dark green, they were always my high ranges. If I had the yellows, they were my middle ranges and the low zones. So it didn't matter where I was in that field. If I had a red area in that field, they were always my low zone. So it wasn't the point by point that we're showing in that project that I had in the presentation, but at least the plant was in a very similar plant health NDVI reflectance range that we can see throughout the field.
Great. All right. Well, hey, we're going to wrap this up. Thanks a lot, Joel. Appreciate the answers to all the questions. There's some questions remaining there, so over the next few weeks you can check the Twitter, and TFI will be answering those questions over that time period. So next, I'd like to introduce Laura Moody. She's the Vice President of Stewardship and Sustainability, and Dr. Sally Flisch. She's the Senior Director of Agronomy at TFI. So Sally, the fertilizer industry is working to increase the adoption of the 4R nutrient stewardship on the farm for agronomic and environmental benefits. We often consider the importance of 4Rs for nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, but why are they also important for micros?
Yeah, thanks, Wendell. So we've been working on a bunch of stuff in order to get that information out. And first, just wanted to start a little bit with who TFI is for anybody who's not familiar with us on the call. And so we represent the fertilizer industry across the U.S. in a whole bunch of different areas. We're based in D.C., but we work on both the manufacturing and the in-field sustainability side of implementing practices. And we also have one of our big successes in the last year has been getting some language in the Farm Bill around research to continue to explore source rate, timing, and placement of crop nutrients that ties into that question as well. So some of the resources we have related to 4R is really thinking about that source rate, timing, and placement. It really applies to all nutrients that we're applying.
Okay, Laura, TFI has been working to expand educational resources for micronutrients. So what's currently available for that?
Sure. So it sounded like Sally's dogs were helping her out today.
Yeah.
Keeping us all from listening to those by muting ourselves. So that's okay. I can take over. So the TFI in the last several years has been, we've acquired some resources that are now available, and we've also been in the process of creating additional resources. So one of the things that we have acquired from what was originally the International Plant Nutrition Institute is their data imagery catalog. So many folks are oftentimes looking for what a specific micronutrient deficiency looks like, and that may be on corn, or it may be on some other particular crop like potatoes or cotton. And so we have an image library that is available. You can access it via the link that's shown there, or just go to the TFI website and look for the store. There's a place. It is available for sale, but it's pretty low cost to be able to obtain that image library. So that's one great resource relative to micronutrients. Another resource we have is folks may have come up through school with their soil fertility manual. And again, also that soil fertility manual has been updated And so the updated soil fertility manual is also available through TFI's store and Shopify site. It's got a lot of great information, not only on the macro and secondary nutrients, but also on the micronutrients that we've been talking about today. So just another resource that is available to folks. Then also, you would have noticed the handouts that we provided for this webinar. And in that set of handouts are a series of articles that Sally has written for the CCA Crops and Soils magazine, where she's taken peer-reviewed journals and other research information and kind of distilled it down into topics for implementing application of micronutrients linked to source rate, time, and place. So that's one thing that's available for free. There are CEU questions tied to that if people want to use them for that. There's also a set of learning modules that are available where TFI has been working with our micronutrient manufacturers to update those previously older versions. So right now there's zinc and boron available in the CCA library, and coming soon is copper and iron. And there's also a webinar series that we did last year, where we had 4 webinars that were available for free and are still available in an archived version on the CCA webinar. So if you're looking for some more specific information around each of the micronutrients, that's a great place to start. And we'll send links to these items in an email that follows the webinar for all the folks that are registered today. So don't worry about that. We'll provide you links to those.
Great. Okay, yeah. So 4R is a big part of what TFI works on in the area of advocacy, right? So what's coming up in the 4R this fall and maybe through the winter?
Yeah, so coming up and actually launched today is the 2020 the 2021 4R Advocate Program. People may have heard us talk about 4R Advocates before. You may have seen 4R Advocate Farmer or 4R Advocate Crop Advisor written up somewhere. The 4R Advocate Program highlights farmers' partnerships with their retailers and crop advisors throughout the year, and demonstrates to the fertilizer industry, to the ag community, and to policymakers the real world benefits of 4Rs that they deliver on the farm. And so for us, the 4R advocates are about recognition of great work that's happening on the ground, but it's also about telling a story and adding to our outreach information and communications. So this year's pretty exciting. It's the 10th year of our 4R advocates. So we're planning a big 10-year anniversary celebration. It would be awesome if you had your advocate in this 10th year. And in that time frame, basically, again, nominations are open right now. You can use the link at the bottom of the screen, or you can go to nutrientstewardship.org, Google 4R advocates, any way you can find it. You can apply to become a 4R advocate. We will select those advocates. Nominations are open through October 30th. We'll select those advocates through a judging panel in November, and then we'll make those awards. And we take those farmers and retailers with us to the Commodity Classic and to other events throughout the year where we can use them to help tell the story for our implementation on the farm. And then the other thing we do with those 4R advocates, and Sally will talk a bit more about this in a second, is we basically use those farmers to help others understand what the value of 4R adoption on the farm is. So we've got a new website. It's 4rfarming.org, and it's got a variety of information on it. But one of the things you can look for there are case studies. And so there are case studies on the economics of implementing 4R practices. And we actually have built those around our past 4R advocates. There are several up there right now. Give us a month or two and they'll be double that. So we're continuing to add to that. And I'll let Sally talk a little bit about what's in those case studies that may be of interest to the folks.
Yeah, so hopefully the dogs are going to be quiet for just a couple seconds here to finish us out.
We'll let the dogs out.
Luckily, they're all the way downstairs, so it shouldn't be too much of a distraction. So one of the things we're doing with the case studies is we're able to look at carbon equivalent emission reductions associated to these practices. So this slide just shows what it looks like over those corn grain case studies that we have so far, being able to calculate that CO2 equivalent. There's also information in there on costs. And as you saw in the previous slide, we do have a fair amount of variability in the crops we're covering. So we've got a couple potato case studies, we've got cotton, we've got strawberries, and some of the newer ones that'll be coming on are more related to dairy production and a little more diverse cropping rotations.
All right. So that's a ton of new and emerging resources for CCAs, retailers, crop managers, and farmers, all related to the 4R nutrient stewardship, advocates, and just the program in general. So don't forget to open up the CCA CEU code in the handouts tab here and scan the code and get your credits. So I want to thank again Joel Johanningmeyer for being our speaker today and presenting us some information about how to manage micronutrients variably. And obviously our sponsor TFI for all the things that they do for the industry all over the country and certainly in Washington. And join us here again on August 26th for Is There Enough Time to Use the Data Collected in 2020 for Variable Rate Applications in 2020 with Andrew Gladden. So join us next time. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thanks again for joining us today and for our sponsor support. Please visit infoag.org for more information about our webinar series lineup and to register for InfoAg Live in December.